Oh, hey, welcome back to YouTube and our channel. I'm working on this week's episode. Thanks for tuning in, but just a word of advice. This particular episode is rated R. So you can watch it at work, but just be advised. Enjoy your holidays.
That's perfect.
This meeting is being recorded.
Oh, is it? It is. It is up there. It's flashing red at me. I had it moved.
I didn't want you to say anything really cool without me recording it.
I plead the fifth.
Got to DIY. Oh, baby, you know why. Well, if you got the time, I'm gonna give it a try. But before you start, we got advice for you all. If you got to hammer, then you got to saw. Baby, please, don't look out that wall. Don't look out that wall. Please do not look out that wall. Really bad idea.
Are we doing don't tear down that wall? Don't take out that wall.
Yes, don't knock out that wall.
Don't knock out that wall.
And that was it. Like after all that we talked about last week, as soon as I got off, that was just what really was resonating in my head. And I was like, I was feeling it.
That reminds me about knocking out a wall. I met with a structural engineer today, and this was mostly for a foundation issue on a house.
Yeah.
But he said he's been looking at like 6 or 7 houses a day, because that's how many, or most of those are new houses being purchased.
Yeah.
But at least one a day is somebody remodeling their house and trying to knock out a wall.
That's fantastic.
Because I saw this and it was like structural engineering on his car, and I'm like, hey, do you do like interior, like beams and stuff when you knock out walls? And he's like, yeah, man, we've been doing at least one a day lately because everybody wants to remodel their house.
Wow.
He was kind of in a hurry. I wanted to sit and talk with him and be like, so is it easy to knock down a wall?
Well, I can tell you that it's easy to destroy anything.
It is too easy to knock out a wall. Yeah. That is true.
One time, maybe I was just looking for something to do. Some friends of mine were looking at buying some land, and I think they were pretty close to buying it, or they had bought it or something. Anyway, there was a trailer. They weren't going to live in this trailer, but it was on the land, and someone had like torn out the roof or like poked holes in the roof or something like that. So the whole inside was just ruined. It was basically just a shell, right?
Okay.
And I don't know, maybe I was just motivated by boredom or just the fact that I was a young kid. I mean, I was like 22 or something like that. I destroyed the front. I like pulled out the door by myself without using anything. I would just started just pulling at stuff. It was just remarkable how easy it was with no tools.
How old were you?
Like 20, 22, 23, something like that.
Okay, so you were man enough to do some things. Yeah.
I hadn't even been working out.
Like back in my day, I'd tear front door out all day.
Now, I don't know if this is a testament to the level of quality of this particular, like if it was, made of paper mache or something. I left that detail out.
Don't even worry about that. That's irrelevant to the story in my mind.
It was a house made of straw, and I just killed it.
You're good. So yeah, let's get into it. I've got to cook food here in a little bit.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody to episode 3.5 of Don't Knock Out That Wall. And today we're going to talk about insulation and specifically, what kinds, how to install it. Stop me if I'm saying things that you're not going to talk about.
Yes. What
what it's
kinds
made,
is part of it?
what it's
Perfect.
made out of,
Yeah.
what how much it costs.
Yeah. I don't really go into costs, but like
Okay.
how to tell. I guess I have a ranking of which one's best and um, how to know if you have enough and what to do if you need more in your house.
Okay.
Yeah.
So first order, tell me, because now I want to know. You know the best. Tell us, Brandon. What is the best?
Okay. It depends on your situation.
Crap.
Don't you love that answer? Isn't that
Yep.
perfect? God, I hate that answer. I'm like, no, really, there's got to be a best.
Yep.
Okay. Backstory to insulation. Insulation is measured in what they call an R value, letter
Mhm.
R value. Um, the best thing that I could figure out was R is for resistance.
Okay, that makes
Think
sense.
electrical, yeah, resistance, current, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
But it's basically how well heat travels through the material. The greater the R value, the less likely it is to travel, like let heat through. So a 0 R value is basically nothing, and a very high R value is what you're looking for. And
I
they
would.
take into consideration like the type of material, the amount, like how many inches of insulation you have. Let's say basically in your attic, the density of the fibers itself, and that kind of thing.
I would say if I'm going by just, um, the opposite of resistance would be a conductor. So I think you're right.
Perfect. That that's all I need to know
All
that I'm
right.
right. All right. Exactly.
Those who are just listening, I just wiped my hands of dust like I'd done some work.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so the best if you're doing walls or attic is going to be spray foam. If you've seen any DIY shows, renovation shows, they have that spray foam. Lizzie gets like crazy excited when it's purple colored, right? They just spray it on there really quick and then it basically blows up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's similar. You can actually get that spray foam in a can for having it seal cracks around doors and windows. We can get to that later, but they make a little foam in a can that expands pretty much the same way.
Foam in a can.
Foam in a can. It's really fun because you'll use the foam in a can, you'll spray what you think is the adequate amount. And then 20 minutes later, you go in there and you're like, okay, so the whole room's sealed off now.
Why
Right.
can't I open the door? What?
Yeah, exactly. It's like pasta, right? You're like, this is enough pasta. Ah,
Oh yeah.
for a family of 20.
Yep.
Okay. So anyway, insulation is cool. You can have it underneath you. You can have it in the walls. You can have it in the attic. Um, most houses are going to have it right on all exterior walls and in the attic. Those should be a given for every house.
Hmm.
Really should. Interior walls really don't matter. The only reason I would think you would do an interior wall is if it's more or less a duplex, like an attached
Okay.
building
Yeah.
to another unit, um, or a specific room, like a movie room, basically for like sound deadening purposes.
Right. Yeah. 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 That makes sense.
Yeah. So there's that. If you have a crawl space, it's good to have insulation like nailed to the underside of the wood underneath it. So you've got the joists that are underneath that frame out the house and the room, right? And then you've got your subfloor. Well, you
Hmm.
can actually staple. Probably the best thing for it is like that rollout, that big pink um, rollout insulation.
Yeah.
It's really easy to install, and it's a pretty good grade. And it's got paper on one end, so you can staple it to the underside of your subfloor pretty easy.
Yeah.
And then under that, you would put a vapor barrier, and that would keep any moisture from underneath your house to seeping in to that insulation. Because if you put insulation underneath your house, especially that roll-on stuff, if it gets wet, it's ruined. Like it's horrible.
Yeah.
It doesn't work at all if that stuff gets wet.
Yeah. It soaks up water really well.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. And underneath the house, it's kind of rare to see, but it's always good to have. Kind of one of those things, like if you just want to go a little step extra on
Yeah.
insulation. Um, you have like an exterior room or something like that that's just colder than every other room, and it's a crawl space. That'd probably be one of my places to check is underneath it.
Right. Yeah.
Plus that roll on that pink, there's different R values for it, but usually underneath doesn't really need a whole lot. Hopefully in your crawl space you don't get much air movement, so you won't get that kind of cool. And you've got subfloor and then the flooring over it to kind of protect and insulate as well.
Yeah.
So underneath it's just a bonus for sure. Your exterior walls need it. Um, a good R factor for your walls is somewhere between 13 and 21. And that's going to be pretty standard for most of the US. Extreme north and south are going to be a little bit different just in the walls themselves.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But for the walls, that pink rollout stuff is usually pretty good and pretty standard for your exterior walls. And again, you can staple that. Those, if you are installing it, they're usually so in between your studs is so every stud is 16 inches on center in your wall.
Theoretically. Yes.
So with the amount of wood each side of center, you've got like 15 and a half ish inches, 15 inches inside.
Right.
Well, that pink rollout insulation is at least 16 inches wide. So it kind of stuffs up in there. However, over time, that can fall behind the wall. So if you just stuff it in there, you're like, okay, that's good. And then you put your sheetrock or whatever on it. And then years later, you don't realize it, but it kind of, I don't know, for some reason, it might kind of deteriorate or just loosen or pests get in there or whatever, and it falls down. And now your outside wall is pretty much not insulated. So it's always good to staple a couple of times on each stud on the inside when you have it up.
Okay.
That's a good tip. In your attic, they recommend, especially from here, an R value anywhere from 30 to 38.
Mm.
And again, Arkansas, we're kind of in the South. As further north you go up, you're going to need a whole lot more. Further south, it's kind of ish. It can go up to 60 of an R value. Anything more than that, it's just from what I've read, it doesn't really make sense to spend the money to add that.
Yeah.
But especially here in Arkansas, anywhere from 30 to 38 is about normal. Good so far?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, how do you know if you have enough just by looking in your attic?
Yeah. Okay. That is a great question, Brandon. I've wondered that too. And I'm just writing things down as we go, as I'm going to touch on each thing
Okay.
you've covered so far with some of my own experiences.
Yeah. Do you need to stop me for any reason now to
Um,
ask or veer off, or before we go into how you can tell how much you have in your attic?
go ahead and cover that because I want to make sure I write down what I was going to say.
Okay. Well, in your crawl space, it's pretty easy. You just go in your crawl space and look up and see if there's any insulation. If there is, great. If it's that rollout that can uh, have moisture in it, you want to make sure that there's a vapor barrier attached to the bottom of your studs, or at least on the ground. In the walls, basically the only way that you can figure out if you have insulation in the outside of your wall, in the exterior walls, is knocking holes in them, which sucks. But
Yeah.
I mean, that's been standard for years to have insulation on the exterior. Now in the attic, so you've got your joists that run on top of your ceiling, and standardly those are standardly
Standardly.
standardly. There we
Yeah.
go. Pretty much every time.
Yeah.
You got 2x8, uh, 2x8 joists up there.
Yeah.
They run, the 8 inches is height. Okay. Now, 2x8, if anybody doesn't know this already, when you do like 2x4 or 2x8, that's the rough cut, quotations, rough cut.
Okay.
And then in the sawmill, what they do is they basically sand down each side. So when you actually measure it, a 2x8 is really 1.5 by 7.5.
Okay. Yeah.
Little fun fact.
Yeah.
2x4 is like 1.5 by 3.5 because they shave a quarter off each side when they sand it. But anyway, so you're up there in the attic and your joist is at least 7.5 inches tall. If you can see your joists without having insulation over them, you need more.
Okay.
That one is, let me see here. I don't think I wrote that down, but I think that's like 15 to 20-ish R value if it just hits the top of your joists. I could be wrong on that one. So you're wanting it well over, and you're wanting it at least 10 inches deep. So you're wanting a good 3-ish inches over the top of your joist.
Okay.
And you just, take a tape measure or a ruler and stick it down in there. And if that insulation goes up to that height, then you should have a pretty sufficient R value. And if your house, if you think you need more insulation, it might be in other areas.
Yeah.
There might be like drafts, and we'll touch on that after a while. But but if you can't see it, more than likely you have sufficient, especially here.
So touching on attic or insulation in general. But if you're looking at your insulation, and I haven't really pulled it out to see, because a lot of it is labeled on the back side, the paper side, as to what the R value is.
Yep.
I don't really know. I haven't looked at that. I just know that it is kind of old and dusty. So is there like a shelf life on any of this stuff? I mean, I know it's like that rollout stuff is made out of like fiberglass, right? Pretty much.
It is fiberglass. The rollout and the pretty much the most common blown in insulation is going to be fiberglass around this area. Yeah. Some of the blown in is cellulose, which is going to be a thinner, more dense, like really dark brown color.
Yeah.
The fiberglass is going to be more of a fluffier white. It's going to look more like snow.
Okay.
Up there. Yeah.
Do they have any sort of way to I mean, do they recommend that you replace it after a certain time?
After a certain time, I actually don't know that. I've never heard that there is. If it's if it ever gets wet or damaged in any way, I would definitely replace it.
Yeah.
Other than that, other than it getting wet or like rodents building nests in it or something like that,
Yeah.
it should stay for a long time. So there's that. More than likely, it's got, especially if it's, I say kind of an older house for this area. It's got that pink rollout stuff because it was really common. If that's all it has, it's barely the height of your joist, if at all. So if you just
Right.
have one roll of that, you want to double check and see the R value of it, but there's a good chance that that's not enough.
Yeah. Okay.
Because the standard back 20 years ago isn't the same standard as it is now.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
there's that. And you can always add more. More than likely, you'll have that roll on. And since we're doing DIY, that white blown in fiberglass insulation, you can actually buy, and it's pretty cool. I've seen this. I haven't done this. I've seen this done. It was done at a house I was in. That kind of makes me sound like a jerk that I had a friend adding it to their house and I wasn't helping, but don't worry about that. Yeah.
People, you don't know the situation.
Yeah, different situation. You weren't there. All right.
Snap judgments.
Yeah, exactly. Judgersons. Okay. So anyway, you can buy this fiberglass blown in insulation. It's that white fluffy stuff that's pretty common over here.
Yeah.
And it comes like really vacuum sealed in kind of a smallish package. And when you open it up, you feed it into this basically, it's kind of like a small cement mixer, maybe a big, like fancy kitchen mixer.
Yeah. It's like a bingo tumbler.
Yeah, it's like the size of a shop vac. So it's what, 15 gallons ish.
Yeah.
Big. And you pour that stuff in there, and it has a deal in there that it rotates to basically break it up, and then it shoots it through a vacuum and basically blows it out the other side.
Yeah.
And that other side is going to be up in the attic. It's got this huge long hose that you can put through your house, through a window up there, however you want it. This is like a 2-story house, so it's like through an exterior bedroom window and then up to the attic was this situation. But anyway, and you can rent those machines from a hardware store. So like your Home Depot and Lowe's, they have those that you can rent, and you can rent them by the day and then just buy the insulation and go up there and just blow insulation until you've got another few inches on top of the insulation that you have. It's a really good, easy, probably weekend DIY thing. It is horribly dusty.
Oh yeah, I bet.
Like that, just blowing that insulation. When they blow the insulation professionally, at least for that cellulose kind, the really darker brown kind, they actually mix in a very small amount of water with it to kind of keep the dust down. Like that's how. It's horrible. If you plan to do that, don't get just one of those random white masks. Like get one of those professional 3M. Looks like you're going into, I don't know, some movie type mask.
Looks like you're gonna make some meth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Ashley got me one of those for Christmas.
Cool.
I wanted a better mask for
meth.
For I'm talking about DIY. You know, I mean, I like to make my meth myself, and I also
right there. We'll do that.
Yeah, just a meth episode.
Because I don't really know much about meth. I do the black tart heroin, so swap stories with that.
We're gonna really have some stories to tell then.
Yeah, that'll be good.
You got me the mask.
Little bonus.
My meth mask.
Meth mask.
Yeah, but anyway, it's big enough for my large head, and it can keep me from having to breathe in all the wood chips and things. So
Yeah, absolutely. You'll need one of these for sure if you're gonna blow in more insulation in your attic.
Yeah.
It's
That's one of those projects that, you know, I dream about
yeah,
because when I go up there, I see the old insulation and I just want to, I first of all, I want to take it all out because I know they had a rodent problem and I don't really see that there are nests up there,
yeah,
but I know that there's poop.
yeah,
I've seen the poop
yeah.
and
Um, I mean, really, in your attic, it's probably dried, and I don't really know if I'd really worry that much about it.
it's probably fine. It just, one of those things is like, if if money wasn't an object, I would just go and just take it all out, just put new stuff in there.
Vacuum it all out, put new in there.
And
Absolutely.
actually, well, I would like to put some more plywood up there just so I can have a little more room to move around because or store things. Like we have a small area that we have like our suitcases and old tubs and things like that.
Yep.
But and there's nowhere I can stand up. I mean, it's too short for me to stand up, but I at least
Outside.
like to be able to maneuver. Right now, when I was working in the bathroom, I just had two tops, not a top and the side of a desk I got from my mother-in-law, and so I would lay on one part of it was just a piece of particle board basically,
Yeah.
lay on one and put the other one in front of me and move over to that one and then grab the other one all while laying down.
Yeah. That's classic.
Yeah. That was my next point. I wrote down, I just put attic fun.
Attic fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And poop. I mentioned those. So, the foam.
Yes.
I have used that in our uh, laundry room.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that there was water damage, and I know that they replaced some things there. But before, in fact, even when the before the laundry machine was in there, and I was redoing the popcorn ceiling and all that kind of the drywall back there.
Yeah.
Because you remember they had. Oh yeah, just to announce, this is the part of the show where we talk about the weird things in our house.
Yeah.
So because of the water damage, uh, the part underneath the water fountain or the water faucet that goes into the washing machine,
Mm-hmm.
there was just a piece of plywood
Mm-hmm.
underneath that instead of drywall. So I took
Mm-hmm.
that plywood out and I re-drywalled everything.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a gap between, where the floor and the wall were supposed to meet. It was about like maybe almost an inch. So
Yeah.
um, I don't know. I'm pretty sure that was a lot of from where because that water damage came from that faucet there.
Yeah. Yeah. Very common for that water spout up there to leak. Yeah.
It's the second time that I've lived somewhere that happened. When I lived with Cameron, one of the faucets started leaking from like there was some sort of small crack or something, and so underneath the handle it just started dripping. We
Yeah.
didn't notice it
Yeah.
until his closet was full of water, basically.
Oh no.
Yeah. And we didn't own that house either, but fortunately we didn't have to pay for anything. There was a trend, and Cameron definitely backed me up on this, but whenever something happened in our house, I usually would just move in and start like fixing stuff, and he would just you do your thing, man. Like I just evacuated everything out of his closet. And I was just like, this goes here, and I brought in fans and pulled up the carpet.
Nice.
Yeah, I was like, I'm saving us.
Yeah. Very nice.
So,
Yeah, that spray foam works. And for those listening, it's in a can. It's like a spray paint can, right? It's like a 12, 15 ounce little spray paint can. Spray foam insulation. I don't even know what it's called. The one I usually get, it's in a red can with yellow labels.
mm-hmm.
I don't know if that really helps anything.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But it's good to seal up holes and stuff, especially like if you're worried about, a draft or insects.
Yes. Yes. That's the other thing. Rodents and air coming into the house. It's great to seal off that. And you can seal off that. Like if you're, the one thing that I'm thinking now is like in the flips, when I replace doors, that trim around your door on the interior side can easily be popped off.
Mhm.
And there's usually a gap somewhere in there between your door frame and that first stud where insulation starts. And that's very rarely ever foamed. And so air can get through that pretty easy. I see that quite often.
Really?
So that's an easy place to foam. Um, Again, anywhere where like plumbing goes through the crawl space or through the outside of your house, vents are huge. Um, that spray foam really works. It does some really good stuff. The bad thing is you almost can't use that can twice.
Yeah, that's I was going to touch on that
Yeah.
because of the experiences I've had. I've learned that, I mean, it takes a little bit of effort. You can kind of clean because it comes with an applicator hose, right? You screw on the top and you hold the can upside down and then you spray, and it comes out the little applicator. And like Brandon said, it goes in the hole and then it expands like a noodle. And you come back and it is a big giant yellow monster. Um, and then you just sort of trim it away to make it look semi presentable.
Yep.
But
And it's easy to cut. The trimming.
yeah, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Here's a pro tip though. If we're talking about things that I've done wrong that I want to help everybody with so they do it correctly, wear gloves.
Oh, because it gets on your hand.
That stuff does not come off. Especially if it gets like on your nails or something like that. It was on my nail for probably a good 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And I used
Yep.
I used fingernail polish remover, I used alcohol, soap, I used, a handgun. It didn't work.
I was about to say you've got to have like a knife and basically scrape off the top layer of your fingernail
Yeah.
to get that off of it. Yeah.
So you've heard it here, folks.
That is true. That is true. Because once it dries wherever it is, it's there.
Mm-hmm.
Stuck to it. 100%. Cool.
I went foam crazy though. I used it all. I still use it in places where I've been needing to seal. When I had to redo the wall in the bathroom the second time, when I had that second leak, or well, I say second leak. It was the first leak in our house. It was the second time the wall had been repaired. So, but yeah, I'll wait. Like whenever I see something like that, like I need to put some foam in there to seal it off, I start walking around the house like, what
You
else?
you got to make it count.
Do we have any open holes? Anything? Feel a draft?
That's perfect. Yeah, because you don't want to waste your money. You need to use the whole can. Yeah. 100%. That's good stuff. So let's talk more about maintaining the inside of your house, right? So sealing off holes is one thing.
Yes.
Gaps in windows and doors is another big thing. Your exterior doors, your windows. Gaps in the windows probably isn't as big as your doors themselves. Again, they make window and door doctors. We touched on this a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Basic contractors that know how to easily and quickly adjust your windows and doors to seal off those gaps.
Mm-hmm.
Usually when there's a gap, if it already has that plastic seal around the outside, it's a small adjustment to the hinge itself. It's kind of where you're going to find the small adjustments. If it's a large gap, you're going to want probably to have if it doesn't have a seal, put a plastic seal around the door jamb. If it does have one, get another one.
Yeah.
Do it.
Let me show you. Hold on. I'm going to grab what I just bought this today. This is very apropos.
Awesome. Yeah, there's that, and they make the thicker ones that actually attach to the bottom of your door itself. So if there's a small gap at the bottom of it, between the bottom of your door and the threshold, again, this is exterior door, they make those attachments on the bottom of it that have some of them are plastic, some of them have a like a flap that goes to it. Some of them are basically a threshold upside down that you can attach to the bottom of your door and help seal that off.
So this came in a box. They sold it individually. I don't. The only thing is that I don't really see any way to adhere it, other than I'd have to buy some other sort of adhesive, maybe. I don't know. What do you think? Can you tell how this? I mean, it looks like it goes around the door frame itself. I would imagine. What do you think? Can you tell just by looking on the?
I've got a good picture of it, but I can't tell how it goes.
Yeah, so I think it goes. I think this is this.
I would agree that flat part. The flat part probably goes on your door jamb, and you could nail that in.
Oh, that's probably what it is.
Might slide behind something as well.
Yeah.
Part of like your door
this part right here, this white part.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, that's what I was thinking too. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's like a foam, and it looks. Yeah, I'm gonna have to nail it, part of it to the door jamb, and it's going to give me extra insulation because I can definitely feel a draft around the side of my door.
Yeah, because if I'm looking at it right, that flat white part that you have isn't actually part of where it blocks off the wind. That's just to attach it to your door frame.
Okay, yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense too because it's more sturdy. So
Yeah.
it's the plastic part that you can. Okay. And guess what, you guys, all you listeners out there, I have a nail gun.
Nice. Did you just pick one up, or no? You've got a couple. You got like a
I got a 3-for-1 deal, man.
pro pack or something of nail.
Yeah. I almost bought some nails today, but I chickened out. But I will buy some. And then I bought this little guy, which goes on the bottom of your door. You can see, just basically, and what caught my eye is because when I was a kid, back in the day, and probably some when I was an adult, would you put a towel at the bottom of the door because there's definitely air that I can feel coming from the bottom. And so I remember when I was a kid, we put the towel down there because we lived in an old house, and it was just like that was a necessity.
Yeah,
to block that threshold down there.
Yep. And you can tell on a really, I would say probably the best day is like a really cold day or a really windy day is just kind of put your hand around the seal on like you're on the inside of the house, but just kind of hover your hand around that crack around your exterior doors, and you should be able to feel that cold air coming in wherever there is a draft. Even a small draft can make a pretty good difference.
Right. Especially in a cold environment.
Yeah, cold environment and a not well insulated home.
Let's see. Can we talk a little bit about vapor barriers? Because I can't remember if we have before. And that's another thing that I would like to improve about my house because I know I have one.
Let's come back to that.
Okay.
So still talking about maintaining your home where you seal off the doors.
Yes.
With these. They also make a plastic sheeting that goes on. So if you have like a door that is all glass or has a lot of those little glass compartments, multiple glass pieces,
Yeah.
uh, they make an actual R-rated plastic sheeting that you can like stick on there with double-sided tape
Mm-hmm.
and then heat it up with a hair dryer, and it
Oh yeah.
basically shrinks on there. And so now your glass has an extra layer of insulation on it.
I think I know exactly what you're talking about.
Cool.
Hey, real quick, now that it's a video, I can show you how that actually works.
So here is the thing that I was just showing to the camera. This is the flappy part. And there's actually a groove that the hard part just slides into right there. It's just the way the door jamb is designed. So it just whoosh, slides in there. There's no adhesive needed, no nails needed. So I just had to wait to use my nail guns for something else. I have to say, if we're thinking about, so we want to have a title for each episode, I think the name of this episode should be Rated R.
Perfect.
We'll write that down.
Write that down.
Rated R.
I like that. Okay. And also with that, so of course, to kind of help the inside, you can do little things like make sure your filters are changed to keep your AC unit and heater running efficiently. You can have a smart thermostat that can kind of help out all around. When you're gone, you can, turn the temperature down. When you know you're going to need it, turn it back up.
Okay,
Go ahead.
I was going to add something to that. Smart thermostats are pretty great. If that's not part of your budget, I would definitely recommend getting a subscription service for your filters, because if you're like me, you need to set reminders for changing your filters. And I didn't do that for the first 30 years of my life. So now I just have one that comes every 3 months.
They do have subscriptions to air filters.
Yes.
Absolutely. And they just deliver it straight to your door.
Yep. It comes. Oh, here it is. It's on the porch, and you put it in, throw the old ones out.
Put it in, done and done. Another thing is, this kind of goes back to the crawl space, and we can segue into the vapor barrier after this, but your attic and in your crawl space, you want to make sure that, especially if you're in a much colder climate, that there's no pipes uninsulated, like coming from your water heater to wherever, or drain pipes, especially if it's like from your AC unit, one of those extra pipes that is like an overflow or something like that. You want to make sure all those have some kind of insulation on them. So if there is water and you have a really deep freeze, I mean, here it gets down to what, 10, 15 degrees, maybe. A couple nights.
Yeah.
During one winter, which can cause a lot of issues. I mean, if you've got something that freezes, even a small freeze can bust a pipe, and it's horrible. So make sure you have that. And in crawl spaces, vapor barriers. I don't know. You had a question with that.
I did.
This is your moment. I'm sorry. I'm passing the baton to you. This is you.
Okay. All right. So vapor barriers, as you said, are barriers with which to block said vapor. And I was thinking I saw a lot. I was thinking I saw a lot of that in some of those Canadian shows, and so I was wondering. So we do have that in our crawl space, but it's just on the ground, and that's another thing that I think needs to be. I mean, what we have works, but if I were to pick smaller projects to just overhaul and improve my house, that
Yeah.
would be one of them.
So that would be one of them. A vapor barrier on the ground is probably going to be the most common that you see, especially around here.
Yeah.
And what that does is it helps from moisture in the ground, whether you have standing water underneath your house, which hopefully you don't. But, and if you do have standing water under your house, you need to find a way to divert that out pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Do
Yeah.
some kind of drainage system or something to just divert it out of underneath your house. But even when there's no standing water, there's still moisture underneath the top layer of the soil, like in the soil, right?
Yeah.
And over time, that moisture evaporates into a vapor, and it rises, hits your joists and the other underside of your subfloors, and all that moisture just gets there, and it breeds mold
Mm.
and other microfiber, whatever mold is, right? Other
It's not a real fungi, but it is.
mold's not fungus.
Well, I was making a bad pun. It is a fungi, but it's not a fungi. It's not fungi. By the way, we'll probably have to put the explicit tag on our podcast now because you used the M word.
What N-word?
No, you didn't use the
Wait,
N word.
wait, what?
You used the M word, which it made me laugh when we did our home inspection.
Wait, I said moisture.
No, you did say mold. I heard you say it.
Mold. Oh, okay.
I didn't know that it was so taboo to say that, but I guess if you are in the business of inspecting a home, you don't want to throw that word around willy nilly.
Mold
Yeah, I
growth.
remember speaking with.
Now, black mold is probably what everybody goes to. They're like, oh, black mold, that kills
Yeah.
everything. And even if mold is a really, really dark, almost black looking color, doesn't mean that it's black mold.
That's good to know.
FYI. Yeah.
Because we did find a mold of some kind when we pulled up the subfloor in that bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm no fungal expert, so I don't know if it was black mold. I didn't get sick.
You know, I can't, I'm not an expert in it either. And I can't tell you what exactly black mold is and why it's so dangerous. And I feel like that's one of those things like you have to send off to get tested to see if it really is black mold or just
Yeah.
really, really dark mold.
Yeah. Well, to clarify, I would say that any mold is not good for your respiratory system.
Correct. No mold is good. Um, that just means that there's moisture hanging around where it shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the vapor barrier on the ground helps keep those vapors in the ground, and they dry up and they don't pass through that barrier and hit your wood, and over time cause that and dry rot and all that kind of stuff on your wood, because
Yeah.
water does damage to everything, right?
Yep.
So on the ground is good. Now, if you have concrete pillars holding up your crawl space, depending on how big of a crawl space you have, that vapor barrier needs to extend up that that concrete pier. I want to say at least like 6, 8, 10 inches. I'd have to double check. I'm
Oh.
going to Google that to see how high up. But if you have a concrete pier, that vapor barrier does need to go up that concrete pier a little bit, and it needs to be taped on the top because moisture does seep in through that concrete.
Ah.
So that's a good tip.
Yes, it is.
And the reason why back earlier when I mentioned having insulation and stapling it to the underside of your subfloor underneath there, and then having the vapor barrier basically stapled to the bottom of your joists was if for some reason that insulation does come unstapled or come off or whatever, it doesn't fall all the way to the ground, right? So it's got that barrier just to kind of have it hanging there.
Yeah.
I don't know, honestly, if having it stapled to the underneath of all those joists or just laying on the ground, if one is really that much better than the other.
Okay. That's really, I was wondering because I know that is a thing,
Yeah.
stapling it to the bottom of the joist. I've seen people do both.
Right. I've seen it too. I would think that having the vapor barrier stapled to the bottom of the joist not only keeps that insulation up, but also keeps, I guess, rodents from under there.
Yeah.
Right. So if you have insulation underneath the subfloor and you have the vapor barrier on the ground, then they can get up in there and make their nest. I don't know if they'd make their nest up there. That's kind of hard to, it's not really a place to sit unless they found like a crossing beam to lay on. But they can definitely like tear it out and take it to wherever their nest is.
Well, here's what I know happened to my crawl space. So there was water damage, so that ruined some of the insulation. That was over there, near the washing machine and stuff.
And that's from the water, so that's from above the floor,
right?
So that's in your house. Yep.
So I replaced that with some extra insulation that I got from work, and I went underneath the house and I took out the old stuff and put in the new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And what was left over from the old stuff were the little pieces of metal that aren't staples, but they're like the little thing you push up to the joist, and it holds the insulation up in between the joists. It's basically like a small, kind of like a coat hanger, but it's just a piece of metal, about.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it goes the length of the interior of your joists.
Yes.
Is it like spring loaded or something? Or?
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit longer than that. So when you push it up, it sort of creates a
tension.
Tension. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So I did that, but I also had to move to the other end of the house near one of the side vents from the house. What are those called? Are those called vents?
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, there was an opening big enough for a cat, and a cat had been going in. I finally found this cat. I saw him go in, and so once he came out, I shoot him away, and then I put a brick in that so he couldn't fit back in there. Okay. But he or she, don't know, had pulled some of it down and was using some of it as like a nest, a cat nest.
Yeah.
So I had to replace some of that too. So anyway, that's another thing. Aside from, just insulating from the elements, you got to prepare for medium-sized animals that want to make a house underneath your house.
Absolutely. Absolutely, you do. Rodents going under there, whether it's they're being greedy and taking it to their nest somewhere else, or they're just using your place for free rent.
Yeah, that was what really irked me the most, because here I am trying to pay a mortgage, and I got a freeloader hanging out underneath. It was just didn't even bother to ask, inconsiderate. Of course, I don't know that I would tell somebody if I lived underneath their house, but it really is the principle.
Not in my house.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's going to be one way of doing it. If you want to go the extreme way of like sealing off your crawl space, you can actually completely seal off those vents. Whether than like, I've seen a couple of different ways of doing it. They make, like covers for those vents, but they seem plastic. I would
Mhm.
assume you would still need something behind them, or you can like brick and mortar those vents completely closed.
Yeah.
And what that does is completely seals off your crawl space from any moisture. Now, you still want a really thick vapor barrier underneath it. And so that helps with the vapor barrier coming up from underneath the ground. And then all of those air vents in your crawl space are sealed off. So that helps water coming through there. It also helps keep uh, air circulating under there. So
Yeah.
it's like a completely closed off place. Now, if you do that, especially here, you've got to have a humidifier underneath there because it traps in all that air and it needs something moving to keep it from just being a hot, steamy bath for mold and everything else. So,
Yeah. So those vents are good, and
they
or
create airflow
yeah,
underneath the house. Yes.
that was one thing I know that I had seen someone talking about or showing the fact that they had a humidifier underneath their house, and I was like, how much crap do I need underneath there? You know?
If you have a humidifier under there, more than likely, I'm going to assume that they have those vents closed off.
Okay.
That would be my guess to it.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. That you have explained that adequately. Now I have the knowledge.
Yay. So that's really expensive. And the humidifier, they have, have them that basically senses the humidity in the air and it turns on whenever it's too high. So it's not just completely always running,
Right.
except, here in August.
Yeah.
Right around pretty much all the time. Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah. Even at night, folks.
Even at night. Okay, that's pretty much all I have about insulation.
Yeah. Yeah, I touched on all the little notes that I have here. We discussed poop and staples and spray foam. That was
Poop and staples and spray foam.
so. Yeah, man.
Perfect.
Cool.
All right. Well, that sounds good. I think that was a good episode.
Yeah. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in. If you want to ask us a question, you can hit us up at insert address. I'm gonna make that now. I'm gonna make it, since we've decided on don't knock out that wall. I'm gonna make that probably dontknockoutthatwall@gmail.com.
Okay, I like that.
All right. Well, this has been another great episode of our podcast. And until we see you again, ladies and gentlemen, Brandon and I would like to remind you to please don't knock out that wall.
Don't knock out that wall.
For the love of God.
Without a structural engineer
Yes.
to assess the situation.
Talk to somebody, anybody.
See if your neighbor knows.
Somebody knows somebody.
Somebody knows somebody about something. All right.
If you ask more than one person, you get at least one. Then don't do it. If somebody's like, "Wow,"
Yeah.
yeah.
If you get that guy that was like, yeah, I was at a Holiday Inn Express last night. Let me tell you exactly what.
In that case, you need to have that guy come over and show you everything else you're missing out on.
Yes, and then have him contact us because we need to get him on the show.
Yeah.
See you later.
See you later.
Don't
last week was a full week, and so I got to finish the editing of the first episode, and I haven't tackled it. I haven't tackled the second. Imagine if I spoke like that. I haven't tackled um, the second one, but it's like 2 hours long, and so
Really, the treated wood one.
yeah.
Okay.
Now, if we go by what Lizzie was saying, maybe 45 minutes of it might not be that funny, and maybe we can just cut that part out.
Yeah, she made that comment more toward the beginning.
Yeah.
Later on, she was like, "Okay, it picks up.
Okay.
Good, you're okay." I was like, "It's just starting, like one, and he hasn't done any like sound effects or music or anything to it."
Yeah.
I was like, Halloween, it wasn't scary when they previewed it before music, right? Fun fact, it was like, they're like, this movie sucks.
Yeah.
And
It's
they added
so dark. Why didn't somebody turn on a light?
Yeah, exactly. And after the music, everybody just peed their pants when they
Yep.
So.
I've been peeing my pants ever since.
Exactly, because you can't get it out of your head.
What'd you say, love? Yep. She confirmed. I pee my pants all the time.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay.